I'm sitting here, in my own damn living room, looking at her laughing in a video with some guy who looks barely old enough to buy a beer. She's wearing that red dress I bought her, the one she told me she only wears for special occasions. Well, I guess screwing some punk behind my back counted as special now. It started when I noticed her getting distant. You know how it is, when someone pulls away, you feel it. I chalked it up to the stress we were both under. We'd put nearly all of our savings into some crypto venture I'd gotten us into. Everyone said it was the next big thing, so we went all in. And then, in the blink of an eye, the market crashed. We lost everything, or close to it. Jessica was furious at first, said I'd ruined our lives. But then she calmed down too quickly, which I found strange. Almost like she didn't care anymore. I should have noticed then. But nah, I was too busy trying to fix everything, to save us from going completely broke. That's when she started spending more time out, claiming she was helping us recover by getting involved with these young crypto traders. They know the market better than we ever will, she'd said with a smirk that didn't sit right with me. I should have questioned it more. Should have seen through her bulls *****. I'm no idiot, though. I started noticing her late-night texts, how she kept her phone screen turned away from me. At first, I thought maybe she was just mad about the money, that she needed space. But when I saw her heading out in the middle of the night, dressed up like she was going to a fancy club instead of meeting with a business partner, the alarms started going off. Then today happened. That damn video. It popped up in my messages from a number I didn't recognize, like a gift from hell. Jessica and her so-called crypto genius, a guy named Tyler, laughing and whispering in each other's ears, sharing drinks, and touching. God, the touching. My heart dropped into my stomach. This wasn't just flirting, this was real, raw, and far beyond any business partnership. As I sat there, rage building in my chest, I realized I'd been a fool. She wasn't just mad about the money. She'd found her way out of our mess by screwing her way to a new plan. And I was the sucker who trusted her, too busy trying to fix our financial disaster while she played house with this kid. But the video wasn't even the worst part. No. It was the way she lied. She'd come home that night after I'd seen the video, looking right into my eyes with that same cool smile. "How was your day, babe?" she asked, like she hadn't been out in some club with Tyler, probably doing God knows what after. I could feel my blood boiling under my skin, my hands itching to throw my phone across the room. But I kept my cool. Not yet. I needed to catch her in the act, needed to hear the lies come straight from her lips. So I smiled back. "Good," I said, holding everything in like a volcano about to explode. She kissed me on the cheek, told me she was going to bed early, and just like that, she was gone, upstairs like nothing had happened. And me? I sat there, phone in hand, staring at the video of my wife and her boy toy, knowing that tonight was the night I was going to blow this whole thing wide open. I couldn't sleep that night. My mind was racing, fueled by anger and disbelief. I lay in bed next to Jessica, her soft breathing filling the room, and all I could think about was Tyler. That smug kid, probably laughing behind my back, thinking he could take my wife and get away with it. The rage was almost too much to contain. I got out of bed quietly, trying not to wake her, and headed downstairs. I had to do something, anything, to clear my head. But as soon as I sat down, that video played in my mind again. Her laugh, the way she leaned into him, her hands resting on his thigh like it was the most natural thing in the world. She used to look at me like that. What the hell happened? Before I could stop myself, I grabbed her laptop off the table. Jessica always had it with her, but she must have forgotten to bring it up to bed tonight. Maybe it was luck, maybe it was the universe giving me a push. Either way, I was going to find out what the hell was going on. The laptop opened up without a password. She was careless, too comfortable. As I clicked through her emails, nothing immediately jumped out. Just the usual spam, a couple of bills, and then, there it was. An email chain between her and Tyler, hidden in a folder named Projects. Clever. I opened the latest one, and it was all right there, staring me in the face. They were planning a trip. A damn trip. To some fancy beach resort, one of those places that costs more than I made in a month. I scrolled down, reading their conversation, and every word made my stomach turn. It wasn't just business. The way they talked. God, it was disgusting. They were talking about leaving me. About how, once Jessica gets what she needs, they'd have enough to start over. She even joked about how easy it was to manipulate me after the crypto crash. My hands were shaking. I was too furious to think straight. How long had this been going on? Was I really that blind? But the worst part wasn't just the affair, it was the money. I had lost nearly everything in that crypto crash, and while I was working my ass off trying to fix our situation, Jessica was cozying up to Tyler, planning to use him to get back on her feet. And then what? Dump me and run off with him? I couldn't take it anymore. I closed the laptop and paced the room, my fists clenched so tight my knuckles turned white. I wanted to confront her right then and there, to wake her up and demand answers. But I wasn't ready. Not yet. I needed more. I needed to see just how deep this went. So I grabbed her phone from her purse and headed outside to the porch, where the cool night air might calm me down a little. Jessica wasn't as careless with her phone, there was a password. But I had seen her unlock it 100 times. It was the same as her birthday. I felt sick to my stomach as the phone unlocked. My hands shook as I opened her messages. I didn't even have to scroll far to find Tyler. He was right at the top. The messages were worse than the emails. Explicit, filthy, the kind of stuff I didn't want to picture her doing with anyone, let alone some arrogant young traitor she barely knew. She'd been meeting him regularly, not just for business, but for late-night rendezvous in hotels. And me? I was at home, trusting her, like the idiot I was. One text from him stood out, "Did you tell him yet?" Her reply, "Not yet. I will once we have everything in place. He won't see it coming." That was it. My blood ran cold. They were plotting against me. The affair wasn't just about sex, it was about taking everything. They were setting me up for the ultimate betrayal, and here I was, completely oblivious. My mind was a storm of emotions, anger, humiliation, sadness. But more than anything, I was determined. If she thought she could lie to me, cheat on me, and then steal from me, she had another thing coming. I wasn't just going to sit back and let this happen. I sat there on the porch, the weight of what I'd uncovered pressing down on me. This wasn't just a cheating wife, it was a full-blown conspiracy. And I had to play it smart. Confronting her now wouldn't do me any good. No, I needed to be patient. I needed to gather more, to make sure I had everything I needed to expose her for the manipulative snake she really was. As I sat there, the first light of dawn creeping over the horizon, I made up my mind. I wasn't just going to fight for what was mine. I was going to burn her whole world down. The sun was barely up when I walked back into the house, Jessica still asleep upstairs, wrapped up in the blankets like nothing was wrong. I stood there at the foot of the bed, watching her sleep for what felt like hours. How could someone I loved so much be capable of something this cruel? How did I not see it? I had given her everything, my trust, my life, my future, and she was ready to toss it all away for some wannabe crypto genius. I couldn't wait any longer. I wasn't going to sit around and let her make a fool of me one more day. Not after what I saw in those messages, not after reading her plan to ruin me. I wasn't some gullible idiot, and she was about to find that out the hard way. I slammed the bedroom door shut. The sound echoed through the house like a gunshot. Jessica bolted upright in bed, eyes wide with shock. "What the hell is wrong with you?" she snapped, rubbing her eyes, still half asleep. "Get up," I said, my voice low, but firm. My heart was pounding in my chest, the anger barely contained. "We need to talk." She frowned, her confusion quickly turning into annoyance. "Can this wait?" I was just. "No, it can't wait," I interrupted, stepping closer to the bed. "I know." Her face dropped, but she tried to play it off, like she didn't understand. "What are you talking about?" she asked, swinging her legs out of bed, standing up. "You're not making any sense, Daniel." Don't lie to me," I growled, holding up her phone. Her eyes went wide for just a second, a flash of panic crossing her face before she tried to cover it up with a forced laugh. "Oh my God, are you seriously going through my phone now? That's such an invasion of privacy, Daniel." She scoffed, crossing her arms like she had the right to be offended. I wasn't having it. "Stop pretending like you don't know exactly what I'm talking about," I shot back, throwing her phone onto the bed. "Tyler? The crypto guy? You've been screwing him behind my back, Jessica. I've seen the texts. I've seen the emails. I know everything." The color drained from her face. For a moment, it looked like she was going to crumble under the weight of the truth, like she might actually show some kind of guilt. But then, just as quickly, that old, cold look came over her. The one I'd seen way too many times lately. The one that told me she wasn't about to apologize. "Are you serious right now?" she spat, her voice dripping with venom. "You think just because you went snooping through my phone, you know what's going on? You don't know Daniel." I couldn't believe it. She wasn't even denying it anymore, just going straight to attacking me. "Don't turn this around on me, Jessica," I warned, my fists clenched at my sides. "I saw everything. The trip you two were planning, the hotel meetups, the messages about how you're just waiting until everything's in place before you leave me. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was to read? Do you even care?" She rolled her eyes, like I was some kind of child throwing a tantrum. "You don't get it, do you?" she said, her voice calm now, like she was explaining something simple to a toddler. "You ruined our life, Daniel. You and that stupid crypto investment. I'm just trying to fix things, to make sure we don't end up living in a cardboard box because you can't keep it together. And screwing Tyler is how you're fixing it?" I shouted, incredulous. "That's your solution? To run off with some little punk and leave me to pick up the pieces?" She didn't even flinch. Her eyes locked on mine, cold as ice. "You're pathetic," she hissed. "You think I'm just going to sit here and watch while you destroy everything I've worked for? Tyler's actually doing something to help. He knows how to get us out of this mess. What are you doing, Daniel? Trying to win back the money you lost? Newsflash, you're never getting it back. You failed." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. The way she said it, with such venom, such contempt, it was like I was nothing to her anymore. Like I was just an obstacle in the way of her new life. I had been wrong to think there was any part of her that still cared. "And what, you think Tyler cares about you? About us?" I shot back, my voice shaking. "He's just using you, Jessica. He's just another con artist, and you're too blind to see it." She let out a bitter laugh. "You're so delusional," she said, shaking her head. "Tyler's 10 times the man you'll ever be. At least he knows how to take control, how to actually make something happen." I couldn't take it anymore. I stepped closer, my voice barely above a whisper now. "If you think for 1 second that I'm going to let you take everything from me, you're wrong. I'm not the fool you think I am. You want out? Fine. But you're not taking my money. You're not taking anything. I'll make sure of that. For the first time, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Fear, maybe. Or realization that she wasn't in control anymore. But it was too late for her to backpedal now. I don't need anything from you, Daniel, she sneered, her voice cold again. I'm done here. I'm done with you. She turned on her heel and walked out of the bedroom without another word, leaving me standing there in the wreckage of what used to be my marriage. As the bedroom door slammed shut behind Jessica, the silence that followed felt like a lead weight pressing down on my chest. I stood there, frozen, staring at the empty space where she had been. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I had loved, had just torn through our life like a tornado, leaving nothing but wreckage in her wake. And the worst part? She didn't care. Not even a little bit. The anger that had been fueling me during the confrontation started to burn out, leaving behind a hollow ache I wasn't prepared for. I sat down on the edge of the bed, my head in my hands, trying to process what had just happened. My marriage wasn't just over, it had been a lie for who knows how long. She had played me, lied to my face, slept with another man, and acted like I was the villain for losing our money. My mind flashed back to when we first met. Jessica was the kind of woman who turned heads wherever she went, confident, beautiful, with a smile that could light up a room. I had fallen for her hard, and for years, I thought she had fallen for me, too. I did everything I could to make her happy, to give her the life she wanted. And yeah, maybe I screwed up with the crypto thing, but I was trying. I was doing my best to make things right. But Jessica? She wasn't trying at all. Instead of sticking by me when things got tough, she had decided to jump ship the moment it looked like we might sink. And the way she did it, with that little piece of Tyler, it wasn't just betrayal. It was a knife to the gut, twisted for good measure. I stood up, pacing the room, my mind racing. Every detail of the past few months started clicking into place. The late nights out, the secretive phone calls, her sudden disinterest in everything we used to care about. It had all been leading up to this, and I was too blind to see it. I trusted her. I believed her lies. I went back downstairs, needing to clear my head, needing to think without the suffocating presence of our bedroom looming over me. The house felt emptier than ever, like Jessica had already taken all the life out of it and left me with the shell. I grabbed a beer from the fridge and sat down at the kitchen table, my thoughts swirling around like a storm I couldn't escape. Why? Why wasn't I enough for her? Why wasn't our life enough? I wasn't perfect, but I didn't deserve this. No one deserved this. My hands clenched around the bottle, the frustration building back up again. I tried to focus, to think about what came next. What the hell was I supposed to do now? She had already made it clear she was done with me, done with this life. But that didn't mean she was done taking from me. If she thought she was going to walk away from this with half of what I had left, she was in for a rude awakening. I knew I needed to act fast. Jessica wasn't going to sit around waiting for me to figure things out. She was smart, devious even, and she'd be working on her next move with Tyler already. I could feel it. They weren't just planning to leave me, they were planning to drain me dry first. I had to be smarter. I had to be one step ahead of her, just like she had been ahead of me this whole time. There was no way I was going to let her get away with everything. No way in hell. But even as I thought about revenge, about protecting myself, the sadness crept in. The reality of what had just happened. My wife was gone. Or maybe she had never really been here at all, and I was just realizing it now. The woman I had loved wasn't real, not the way I thought she was. The Jessica who kissed me goodnight, who smiled at me across the dinner table, who promised me a future together, she was just a mask. And the woman behind that mask? I didn't recognize her. She was cold, calculating, heartless. I'd seen glimpses of it before, but I never wanted to believe it. Now, there was no denying it. I finished my beer and stared out the window, the first rays of sunlight breaking over the horizon. What now? Where did I go from here? Divorce was the obvious choice, but it wasn't that simple. We were tied together financially, and with the crypto crash, things were already tight. She'd use that against me. She'd try to take everything she could get her hands on, and with Tyler whispering in her ear, who knew what kind of dirty tricks they had planned? I needed to protect myself, protect what was left of my life. But more than that, I needed closure. I needed to look her in the eye one last time, not as the woman I loved, but as the person who betrayed me. I needed to confront her again, this time with a clear head and a plan. I couldn't let her win. I couldn't let her walk away thinking she'd destroyed me. As the day began to wake up around me, I made a decision. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The day dragged on, but my mind didn't stop. Jessica hadn't come back home after storming out, and honestly, I didn't expect her to. She was probably with Tyler, cooking up their next move, thinking they had me right where they wanted me. But they were wrong. This wasn't going to end the way she thought. I sat down at the kitchen table again, this time with my laptop, determined to figure out my next steps. Jessica thought she had the upper hand, but there were a few things she had overlooked. First, I knew more about our finances than she did. She might have been screwing around with Tyler, playing the crypto queen, but I was the one who had set up all our accounts. I was the one who knew where every last cent was. If she thought she could just waltz out of here and take what was left, she had another thing coming. I logged into our joint accounts and started sifting through everything. Most of it was wiped out, thanks to the crypto crash, but there was still some left. Enough to fight her in court if I needed to. I moved everything out of our joint account and into a new one she didn't have access to. It was a small step, but it felt like I was finally taking control of something in this mess. I wasn't going to be her pawn any longer. But this was just the beginning. I needed more than just a financial backup plan, I needed to hit her where it hurt. Jessica had been playing dirty from the start, so I had no problem getting my hands a little dirty, too. She wanted to play this game? Fine. I'd play. But I was going to win. I started digging into Tyler next. I didn't know much about him beyond what I had seen in her emails and texts, but I knew enough to know he wasn't exactly a saint. He was some hotshot crypto trader, sure, but guys like him always had skeletons in their closet. I figured it wouldn't take long to find something I could use. After about an hour of searching, I hit pay dirt. Tyler wasn't just some ambitious young trader, he had a trail of shady deals and failed investments a mile long. A few years back, he had been involved in some pump and dump schemes that got him blacklisted from several trading platforms. Of course, Jessica didn't know that. She thought she'd found herself a golden ticket, but really, she'd latched onto another sinking ship. I saved every bit of dirt I could find on Tyler, every shady transaction, every lawsuit he'd been named in. If this went to court, I'd make sure she knew exactly who she was throwing her life away for. But more than that, I wanted her to feel it. I wanted her to see how wrong she was, to realize the huge mistake she had made before she had the chance to walk away with anything. The day turned into night, and still, no sign of Jessica. I wasn't sure where she was, but it didn't matter. I had my own moves to make. I wasn't going to sit around waiting for her to destroy my life. I called my lawyer the next morning, laying it all out. The crypto crash, the affair, the financial schemes, everything. He listened quietly, only interrupting to ask a few questions, and when I was done, he let out a low whistle. "Sounds like a mess," he said. "But if what you're telling me is true, you're in a good position. She won't be able to claim much, especially with the way she's been acting. And if we can prove she's been funneling money to this Tyler guy, she's screwed." I leaned back in my chair, finally feeling like I had some control. "I want to go after her," I said, my voice steady. I want to make sure she doesn't walk away with a dime." "We can do that," he replied, his tone professional but a little wary. "But be careful. Don't let your anger drive you. The court will see right through that. We need to be smart about this." Smart. That was the key. I couldn't let my emotions get the better of me, even though everything inside me wanted to lash out, to make her pay for what she'd done. But this wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about protecting myself, about making sure that when this was all over, I still had something left. After I hung up with the lawyer, I sat there for a long time, staring at my phone. I knew what had to come next, but I wasn't sure if I was ready. Confronting Jessica again wasn't going to be easy, but I needed to do it. Not just for the sake of closure, but to let her know that I was onto her game and I wasn't backing down. I was still thinking it over when my phone buzzed on the table. A text. From Jessica. "We need to talk." Of course, now she wanted to talk. I didn't reply right away, letting her sweat it out for a bit. She had no idea what I had planned, and I wasn't about to let her dictate how this went down. Finally, I typed back, keeping it simple, "Meet me at the house." I wasn't sure what she was going to say, but I was ready for anything. I had the upper hand now, and I wasn't about to let her slip away without facing the consequences of what she'd done. As I sat there, waiting for her to come home, a strange calm washed over me. I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control of my own life again. The house felt eerily quiet as I waited for Jessica. The ticking of the kitchen clock was the only sound, each second dragging out the suspense of what was about to come. I stood by the window, staring out at the driveway, mentally preparing myself for the confrontation. She was about to find out that the game was over. I had spent the entire day digging up everything I could on Tyler, setting up my accounts, and putting things in place. Now it was time to see what her next move was, and I was ready for whatever she had to throw at me. My phone buzzed again. It was her. "On my way. Be there in 10. I could almost feel the tension rolling off her text, the way she was probably preparing her excuses, maybe even planning to sweet-talk her way out of this. But this wasn't going to be like the last time. I wasn't going to let her spin any more lies, and I sure as hell wasn't going to fall for any of her fake charm. The minutes ticked by slowly, and finally, I saw her car pull into the driveway. The headlights cut through the dark, and I could feel my pulse quicken, a mixture of anticipation and anger bubbling up inside me. This was it. Time to end this charade. Jessica stepped out of the car, looking as put together as always, hair perfect, makeup flawless, wearing that same red lipstick she used to wear when we'd go out. She didn't look like someone who had just blown up her life. No, she looked calm, collected. She was still playing her part, still wearing that mask of control. But tonight, it was slipping. She walked in without knocking, her heels clicking against the floor as she entered the house. The moment our eyes met, I saw something in her face, a flicker of uncertainty, like she wasn't sure how this was going to go down. Good. I wanted her to feel off balance. "Daniel," she said, her voice steady but cautious. "We need to talk." I didn't answer right away, just watched her as she stood there, her hand still clutching her purse like she was ready to bolt at any moment. I finally nodded toward the kitchen table. "Sit." She hesitated for just a second before walking over and sitting down, crossing her legs like she was settling in for a casual conversation. But I wasn't about to let her feel comfortable. "You've been lying to me, Jessica," I started, cutting right to the point. "About Tyler. About everything." Her expression didn't change right away, but I could see her tensing up. "I told you, it's not what you think. Tyler and I." "Don't," I interrupted, slamming my hand down on the table. "Don't even try it. I've seen the texts. The emails. I know about the hotel meetups, I know about the trip you were planning. Hell, I even know about your little plan to wait until everything's in place before you left me. So don't sit there and pretend like it's just some misunderstanding. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. For the first time, I saw her struggle to come up with a lie. She had always been so quick, so smooth with her excuses, but now? Now she was cornered. Finally, she leaned back in her chair, letting out a slow breath. Fine. You know, she said, her voice suddenly icy. I wasn't planning on telling you like this, but since you've already gone snooping through my phone, I guess there's no point in hiding it anymore. I clenched my jaw, my hands balling into fists under the table. The cold way she was talking, like this was no big deal, like she wasn't wrecking our life, it was infuriating. But I kept my cool. I needed to hear it. I needed to hear her admit it. So, what? You were just going to string me along until you were ready to walk away with him? I asked, my voice low but trembling with anger. Jessica shrugged, crossing her arms like she was bored with the conversation already. I didn't want it to end like this, Daniel. But let's be real, you ruined us when you lost everything in that crypto mess. Tyler's helping me get back on my feet. He's got connections, he knows how to make money, and I wasn't about to let you drag me down with you. And screwing him was part of the deal, I guess? I shot back, my words dripping with venom. She rolled her eyes. God, you're so dramatic. You think this is all about some affair? This is about survival. You crashed our life, and I'm doing what I have to do to survive. I stared at her, the woman I had once loved, and realized there was nothing left of the person I thought she was. She had become a stranger, someone cold, manipulative, willing to do whatever it took to get ahead. And she didn't even care how much it hurt me. You think Tyler's your way out, I said, leaning forward, my voice steady now, no longer trembling. But you don't even know who you're dealing with. I've seen his record, Jess. The lawsuits, the pump and dump schemes. He's a fraud. And if you're planning to ride off into the sunset with him, you're in for a rude awakening. Her eyes narrowed, but I could see the flicker of doubt, of fear. She hadn't expected that. What are you talking about? I leaned back, a smirk tugging at the corner of my lips. I've done my homework. Tyler's nothing but a con artist. You think you're getting out of this mess by hitching your wagon to him? You're going to end up just as broke as we are now, if not worse. For the first time, Jessica's mask cracked. Her confident, bitchy facade faltered, and I saw the fear in her eyes. She wasn't in control anymore. I was. You're lying, she said, her voice shaking just a bit. I pulled out my phone and opened the file I had saved with all the dirt on Tyler. I slid it across the table to her. See for yourself. She hesitated before picking it up, scrolling through the pages of evidence, her face growing paler with each second. When she finally looked up at me, the cockiness was gone. This can't be real, she muttered, more to herself than to me. Oh, it's real, I said, standing up, looming over her now. And if you think I'm going to let you and that loser walk away with my money, you're even dumber than I thought. She stared at the screen, her hands shaking. I could see the panic setting in, the realization that her perfect little plan had just imploded. But I didn't care. She deserved every bit of it. I'm filing for divorce, Jessica, I said coldly. And trust me, you're not getting a dime. She didn't respond, her eyes still glued to the evidence of Tyler's scams, her world crumbling around her. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of satisfaction. I turned and walked out of the room, leaving her sitting there in the ruins of the life she had tried to destroy. I didn't look back when I left the room. The sound of Jessica's shallow breathing, the tension in her frozen stance as she sat there staring at Tyler's exposed fraud, was the last thing I heard before I stepped out into the hallway. The door behind me remained open, and the silence that followed felt like closure I didn't know I needed. For months, I had been suffocating under her lies, her betrayal, and the weight of everything that had gone wrong between us. But now, for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again. I walked outside, into the crisp night air, letting the cool breeze hit my face. It was over. Really over this time. I had said the words, divorce. And from the look on her face, Jessica knew I meant it. She wasn't going to charm or manipulate her way out of this one. I sat down on the porch steps, the weight of the past few days crashing down on me all at once. I had been through every emotion imaginable: anger, heartbreak, disbelief, and now, all that was left was a kind of numbness. It wasn't peace, not yet, but it was close. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Jessica. I wasn't sure what I expected, maybe another round of excuses, more lies, or even a desperate attempt to patch things up now that her grand plan with Tyler had crumbled. But when I opened the message, it was short, to the point, and completely out of character for her. We need to talk. Tomorrow. I stared at the message for a long time, my thumb hovering over the screen. What could she possibly have to say now? After everything, after all the deception, after I'd pulled the rug out from under her, what was left to talk about? But then, as I sat there, another thought crossed my mind. Maybe this wasn't about her trying to salvage anything. Maybe she was finally going to come clean, to admit everything. Or maybe she had something up her sleeve, another twist, another desperate attempt to get something out of this. I didn't respond. Not yet. I needed to be ready for whatever was coming, and more importantly, I needed to stay one step ahead of her. I couldn't let my guard down now, not when I was so close to getting out of this mess for good. The night dragged on, and when I finally went back inside, the house was dark and silent. Jessica hadn't moved from where I had left her in the kitchen. I could see her silhouette from the doorway, still hunched over the table, her face illuminated by the glow of her phone as she scrolled through the pages of dirt I had on Tyler. She looked small, defeated, like the fight had finally left her. Good. I went upstairs, leaving her alone in the darkness. If she had something to say, she could wait until tomorrow. Tonight, I needed sleep. Tomorrow would be the real reckoning. The next morning, I woke up to find Jessica gone. The kitchen was spotless, as if she had wiped away every trace of herself in the night. No note, no message, nothing. Just an empty chair where she had been sitting. I wasn't surprised. She had always been one to run when things got tough, to disappear when she couldn't control the situation anymore. I made coffee and sat down, waiting for the inevitable. She said she wanted to talk, but I wasn't going to chase her down. If Jessica had something to say, she could come to me. I wasn't playing her games anymore. Around noon, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting her so soon, but when I opened the door, it wasn't Jessica standing there. It was Tyler. The sight of him on my doorstep was like a punch to the gut. He looked nothing like the slick, confident guy from the video, the one who had laughed with my wife and made her forget all about me. He looked rough, disheveled, bags under his eyes, his clothes wrinkled like he'd slept in them. "What the hell do you want?" I said, my voice cold. He shifted awkwardly, running a hand through his messy hair. "I need to talk to you." I crossed my arms, leaning against the doorframe. "I don't think we have anything to talk about." "Just hear me out," he said, desperation creeping into his voice. "This isn't what you think." I let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, really? So you're not screwing my wife? You're not trying to scam her out of what's left of our money?" "Because that's exactly what I think." Tyler shook his head, his eyes darting around like he was looking for an escape route. "It's not like that, man." "I didn't, Jessica, he sighed, rubbing his temples like he was trying to pull his thoughts together. "She used me, all right. She played me just like she played you. I stared at him, trying to make sense of what he was saying. Was this another one of Jessica's tricks? Had she sent him here to manipulate me into thinking she wasn't as bad as I knew she was? I don't buy it, I said, stepping forward. You expect me to believe you're the victim here? After everything? He looked up at me, his face pale and pleading. I swear to you, I didn't know what I was getting into. She told me you guys were done, that it was over between you. I believed her. But now I know she was just using me to get to your money. I wanted to punch him. I wanted to knock that pathetic look off his face and make him pay for every moment he'd spent with Jessica behind my back. But something stopped me. The look in his eyes, it wasn't just fear. It was real, genuine regret. Why should I trust you? I asked, my voice low, steady. You've been lying to me this whole time. He shook his head again, desperation creeping back into his voice. I didn't know, man. I didn't know she was planning to screw you over like that. I thought we were in this together, but the minute things started going south, she cut me off. She doesn't care about either of us. She's only in this for herself. I stepped back, letting his words sink in. Part of me wanted to laugh. Of course she was only in it for herself. I had known that from the moment I found out about the affair. But hearing it come from Tyler, seeing him standing here, broken and scared, it made everything feel final. She's gone, I said after a long pause. She's not coming back. Tyler blinked, confused. What do you mean? I mean, you're right, I said, stepping aside and gesturing for him to leave. She played both of us. But I'm done with her. And you should be too. He stood there for a moment, staring at me like he didn't quite believe what I was saying. Then, slowly, he nodded and walked away without another word. I closed the door behind him, the sound of it echoing through the empty house. Jessica had taken everything from me, or at least tried to. But now, for the first time, I felt like I had won. I had outsmarted her, outplayed her. And in the end, she had nothing. The door closed with a heavy thud, and for a long time, I just stood there, staring at the wood grain like it held some kind of answer. Tyler's footsteps faded into the distance, and with him, the last tangible connection to Jessica disappeared. The house was quiet again, but this time it wasn't suffocating. It was peaceful. Empty, sure, but I realized that wasn't a bad thing. I walked back to the kitchen, sat down at the table, and looked around. It was strange, how familiar everything looked but how different it felt. This house used to be filled with love, with laughter, with plans for the future. Now, it was just walls and furniture, nothing more than a stage where Jessica's betrayal had played out. But as I sat there, I realized something, I wasn't sad. Not anymore. The grief, the shock, the humiliation, they were gone, replaced by something stronger. Clarity. For months, I had been drowning in confusion, trying to piece together how everything had fallen apart. Now I knew. Jessica wasn't the woman I had thought she was, and she never had been. And that was okay. She was gone, and I was still here. I wasn't naive enough to think it would all be smooth sailing from here. There was still the divorce to deal with, and who knew what tricks Jessica might try to pull before it was finalized. But I had something now that I didn't have before, power. I had taken back control of my life, of my future. And that felt damn good. The phone rang, pulling me out of my thoughts. For a second, I thought it might be Jessica, calling to try one last desperate attempt at manipulation, but when I picked it up, it was my lawyer. Daniel, I've got some news, he said, his voice businesslike but with a hint of satisfaction. Jessica's lawyer reached out this morning. She's ready to settle. I couldn't help but let out a dry laugh. Of course she was. Now that Tyler was out of the picture and her plan had fallen apart, she had no other option. What's she asking for? I asked, half expecting some ridiculous demand. Not much, he replied, sounding surprised. Looks like she's given up. She's willing to walk away with almost nothing, just a small portion of what's left. You'd still keep the house, the car, and the majority of the remaining assets. Honestly, it's a better deal than I expected. I leaned back in my chair, letting the words sink in. Jessica, the woman who had tried to take everything from me, who had lied and schemed and betrayed me, was walking away with scraps. Part of me wanted to gloat, to relish in her defeat. But another part of me just felt done. Take the deal, I said, my voice calm and steady. Let's finish this. I could almost hear the smile in my lawyer's voice as he replied, "Will do. I'll get the paperwork started. You should have everything wrapped up by the end of the week." After I hung up, I sat there for a moment, letting the weight of everything finally lift off my shoulders. It was over. The marriage, the betrayal, the games. All of it was behind me now, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I could finally look forward. I stood up, walked over to the window, and stared out at the world beyond my front yard. The sky was a brilliant blue, the sun shining down like it was mocking how dark things had been inside my head for so long. But now, it didn't feel mocking. It felt hopeful. I wasn't sure what the future held for me, but I knew one thing: I wasn't going to let anyone take advantage of me again. I had learned a hard lesson, but it was a lesson worth learning. Jessica's betrayal had torn my life apart, but in doing so, it had also set me free. Free from the lies, the manipulation, the constant feeling of not being good enough. I grabbed my jacket, slipped it on, and walked outside. The fresh air hit my face, and I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past few months leave me with each exhale. I wasn't that same man who had sat clueless in his own house, trusting a woman who was plotting against him. I was stronger now. Wiser. As I walked down the street, my mind started to wander to what came next. Maybe I'd move out of the house, get a fresh start somewhere new. Or maybe I'd stay here, rebuild my life on my terms. Either way, I knew one thing for certain: I was done looking back. The future was wide open, and this time, I was in control of it. I hadn't just survived Jessica's betrayal, I had come out of it stronger. And as I walked away from the wreckage of my past, I couldn't help but smile. Let her have her small victory. Let her think she won something. In the end, I had what mattered: my dignity, my future, and most importantly, my freedom. And no one was ever going to take that from me again.